He came to help flood victims, but instead, he found something that changed his life forever. A foreign NGO worker stood outside a small mosque, listening to the adhan for the very first time. His heart trembled, his eyes filled with tears, and that night, he had a dream, La ilaha illallah echoing through the storm. That was the moment everything changed. He entered the mosque as David, but he walked out as Dawood, a Muslim filled with peace. From NGO worker to Muslim, the story you won't forget. The rain had fallen for days in the rural valley of Caliper, a forgotten corner of the world where dust roads turned to rivers and the cries of the poor were swallowed by silence. Relief camps were pitched on muddy plains, their canvas walls trembling under the weight of the storm. Children with hollow eyes and women with tired faces stood in queues, waiting for sacks of rice, bottles of clean water, and the mercy of strangers. Among the workers was David Miller, a 35-year-old man with a past he never spoke of and a heart that seemed both restless and searching. He was known for his dedication, for carrying heavy boxes when others rested, for staying awake with sick children when the doctors had gone. Yet, there was something about David that unsettled even himself. No matter how much he gave, he always felt empty inside. David worked for an international NGO that prided itself on neutrality, aid without faith, compassion without creed. But secretly, David's soul longed for something deeper, something beyond the act of giving bread and medicine. Every night, when the camp quieted, he sat under a flickering lamp in his tent, staring at the rain-soaked darkness, asking himself questions he could not answer. Why does this ache never leave me? Why does my heart feel hollow, even when my hands are full of good deeds? A whisper in the night. One evening, after delivering supplies to a flood-stricken village, David found himself lost in the narrow lanes. The rain had ceased, and the moon broke through the clouds, painting the muddy paths silver. He wandered aimlessly until he heard something, soft, rhythmic, unlike anything he had ever known. It was the adhan, the Muslim call to prayer. The voice rose from a cracked loudspeaker fixed on a small mosque at the edge of the village. The sound pierced the night, not loud enough to command, but gentle enough to invite. David froze. The words were foreign, yet they stirred something deep inside him, like a memory his soul had long forgotten. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. His heart pounded. He didn't understand the meaning, but the tone felt like truth pressing against his chest. He walked toward the sound, his boots sinking in the mud, until he reached the mosque. A few men were entering, removing their shoes, their faces calm despite the wreckage of the floods around them. One old man glanced at David, smiled, and gestured for him to come in. David hesitated, then shook his head politely. He stood outside as the men lined up in rows, shoulder to shoulder, their heads bowing as one. He had seen people pray before, but this was different. There was no music, no theatrics, just submission, pure and absolute. For reasons he couldn't explain, tears stung his eyes. The encounter. The next morning, as David supervised the unloading of relief trucks, the same old man from the mosque appeared. His clothes were simple, his beard white as snow, his eyes carrying both wisdom and warmth. "Peace be upon you," the man said in broken English. David smiled awkwardly. "Peace, thank you. You were at the mosque last night, weren't you?" The man nodded. "Yes." "You stood outside." David hesitated. The call. The prayer. It was beautiful. The old man's face lit with joy. That is the call to remind us that there is no power, no might, no refuge except with Allah. The words lingered. No refuge except with Allah. David had built his life on giving refuge to others. But who had given refuge to him? The man introduced himself as Abdul Rahman, a retired schoolteacher who had lost his house in the floods yet still spent his time helping his neighbors. David found himself drawn to the man's calm presence, and over the next days, they spoke often. Abdul Rahman never preached, never argued. He simply answered questions with a gentleness that disarmed David. Why do Muslims pray like that? David once asked. Because we remember our Creator 5 times a day. Not when we choose, but when He calls. It keeps the heart alive. The restless heart. David returned to his tent each night, unable to sleep. His mind replayed the adhan, the rows of prayer, the words of Abdul Rahman. He had read scriptures before, Bibles, sutras, even philosophy, but they had left him with more questions than answers. This was different. Islam didn't feel like philosophy. It felt like a direct answer to a direct cry of the soul. But with the attraction came fear. His colleagues were secular, some even hostile to religion. If they knew he was interested in Islam, what would they think? Worse, what about his family back in Canada? Staunch Christians who saw Islam only through the lens of the media? One night, while rain hammered the tent roof, David opened his laptop and typed, Quran English translation. He found a copy online. His eyes scanned verses at random, until one struck him like lightning. Indeed, in the remembrance of Allah, do hearts find rest. Surah Ar-Raid 13:28. He slammed the laptop shut, his hands trembling. This is it. This is what I've been searching for all these years. Yet fear chained him. He closed his eyes, whispering into the darkness, God, if this is truth, show me a sign. Please, I can't keep wandering. The dream. That night, David dreamed vividly. He was drowning in floodwaters, thrashing against the current, crying for help. Just as his strength gave way, he saw a light descending through the storm. A hand reached out, not a hand of flesh, but of pure light. And a voice, clear and resounding, echoed, La ilaha illallah. He woke up gasping, his shirt drenched in sweat, his heart racing. He didn't know the exact meaning of the words, but he remembered Abdul Rahman once whispering them during their talks. There is no God but Allah. David sat frozen. He had asked for a sign. Had God just answered? The struggle. Days turned into weeks, and the floods receded. Relief camps began winding down, but inside David, a storm raged fiercer than ever. He wanted to embrace Islam, yet fear of rejection, fear of losing everything he knew, chained him. He confessed his turmoil to Abdul Rahman one evening as they distributed blankets to villagers. My heart feels like it belongs here, David whispered, but my mind is terrified. Abdul Rahman placed a hand on his shoulder. The path to truth is never without fear. Even Prophet Ibrahim, A.S., was thrown in a fire for saying La ilaha illallah. What matters is not the fear, but the courage to walk through it. David's eyes burned with tears. The dark test. One night, a fierce storm returned. David was alone in the camp's medical tent when the power went out. The children inside whimpered in fear. As he lit a lantern, he suddenly felt an icy presence behind him, an unsettling shadow moving where no one stood. A whisper cut through the wind. Leave them. Leave this path. You don't belong here. David spun around. Nothing. Yet the chill didn't fade. His heart raced. He remembered Abdul Rahman telling him about the whisperings of Shaitan, how evil spirits try to drag a person away when they near the truth. Terrified, David sat in the corner, clutching the Quran translation he had downloaded. His trembling fingers opened it at random. His eyes landed on, So do not weaken and do not grieve, and you will be superior if you are true believers. Surah Al-Imran 3:139. The fear melted into calm. The shadow was gone. David wept. He knew now that the battle wasn't outside. It was inside his heart. The turning point. The final blow came unexpectedly. One of David's colleagues, a fellow aid worker named Simon, mocked the villagers for stopping their work at prayer time. They waste time bowing to nothing, Simon scoffed. Something snapped inside David. For the first time in his life, he defended a faith he hadn't even entered yet. They're not bowing to nothing, David retorted sharply. They're bowing to the one who gave them breath, the one who gives them strength to keep going when the world abandons them. Simon stared, bewildered. David himself was stunned by his words. He realized he could no longer pretend. His heart had already crossed the threshold. That night, under the stars and the soft hum of the village, David went to Abdul Rahman. His voice trembled. I'm ready. Abdul Rahman smiled, tears in his old eyes. Together they stood in the quiet mosque. David repeated after him, word by word. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. The moment the words left his lips, David felt a weight lift from his chest, as though the emptiness of years had been filled in an instant. His tears flowed freely, his heart pounding with a joy he had never known. The storm of rejection. But the journey didn't end there. News of David's conversion spread quickly. Some colleagues congratulated him politely, but others treated him with suspicion. Simon confronted him one evening. "You're brainwashed," Simon sneered. "We came here to help people, not to join their religion." David, now Dawood, replied calmly, "I came here to give food, yes, but I received something greater, truth. I can't ignore it." When he wrote to his family in Canada, the backlash was even harsher. His mother wept, his father raged, his sister accused him of betraying their faith. Dawood's hands trembled as he read their letters, but in his heart, he felt no regret. He remembered the verse, "And whoever Allah guides, for him there is no misleader." Surah Az-Zumar 39:37. A new dawn. Dawood continued his aid work, but everything was different. Every act of service became worship, every smile a reminder of Allah's mercy. He prayed with the villagers, broke fasts with them, and for the first time in his life, felt at home, not just in the world, but in his own soul. He began memorizing short surahs, waking before dawn to join Abdul Rahman in far prayer. Each verse felt like a jewel placed inside his heart. Sometimes he cried in sujud, whispering, "Ya Allah, thank you for not abandoning me even when I didn't know you." Epilogue. Years later, Dawood established his own NGO, but with a difference. Its mission was not only to feed the hungry, but also to heal hearts with the remembrance of Allah. He traveled across disaster zones, carrying not just bread and medicine, but also the words that had saved him. Indeed, in the remembrance of Allah do hearts find rest. Whenever he heard the adhan, he would close his eyes, remembering the night when a forgotten village in a flooded valley became the place where his heart was reborn. And whenever someone asked why he left everything behind to embrace Islam, he smiled and said, "I didn't leave anything. I only found what I was always searching for, peace with Allah." Subscribe to Deen in Minute for more life-changing Islamic stories. Share this story, because someone you know might be searching for the same peace.